flesh this out. Turn it over to Bob Bernstein.
Thank you very much, Scott. Scott and I actually are colleagues, but didn't really know each other until this started. So I'm glad to have a chance to get to know him a little bit better. I want to thank Scott for putting this together. I'd like to thank Mr. 2X. I know I saw you in the back. Thank you very much for helping to organize this event tonight. I'm Robert Bornstein, and I am not an expert on school security. I'm merely a concerned parent of 2 JCPS students, one of whom goes to a middle school in which loaded guns were found this school year. So obviously, as a parent, that concerned me greatly. I was somewhat dismayed when JCPS sent home a note telling me that my child was never in any danger, when actually I believe that everybody in that building was in danger the moment a student showed up to school with a loaded gun. So we sent this letter to the school board. We've not ever gotten an official response. However, I should note that Dr. Razor's here, and we very much appreciate him taking a few of us up to Cincinnati on Tuesday, where we visited Taft High School and learned a lot from their head of security and some other security personnel and some other school officials there about what they're doing in the area of school security, which includes metal detectors, but that is certainly not the whole story. They have implemented technology in various exciting ways, such as controlled access to the buildings, security cameras, panic buttons, an interesting computer system called Lobby Guard, which scans the ID of all visitors into the school, keeps a record of that, also runs them against a sexual predator database, and has the opportunity to know if people that are coming into their schools just don't need to be there. So I'd like to invite you to listen to the panelists tonight and participate in the debate. I invite you to continue this discussion by joining our Facebook group called Citizens for Safer Schools. I don't have all the answers. I'm sure our panelists don't have all the answers either. But I do believe we're not doing everything we can to protect our students. And by coming out tonight, I think we're going to take a step in the right direction to hopefully implement some new security procedures in the Jefferson County Public Schools. So thank you all very much for coming out.
Thank you, Bob. Let's start out with the pro, then we'll switch to a con. Let's have Shannon Father speak first, and then we'll go to the con table.
As they said, we went to Cincinnati on Tuesday, and I found it very interesting. 2 of my children go to JCPS, and also different schools are involved, but both schools have had guns there this year, and we decided to do something about it. All the attorneys involved, except for one, have kids at JCPS, but she has her sister works at JCPS. She has nieces and nephews at the schools. And we need to rely on something other than being lucky that the kids have turned each other in or that the teachers happen to have caught it. We want to do something about it now before anyone gets shot in the schools. So I won't take any more of your time, so hopefully you'll have questions for us when we get to that point.
How about if we could hear from Mr. Murphy on the con table?
This is on. Good, it's on. I usually don't need it's on. Okay. Full disclosure, I don't have a child at JCPS schools anymore. I don't need to disclose to you that I'm too old probably to have children in high school or junior high anymore.
Is this one of those debates with the microphone's ready?
Yeah. At the neutral table, we're going to need a mic as well. Would you please turn that on? Our sound man, can you make sure that's on?
Hello.
Could the sound man please turn on the mic at the neutral table?
It's on.
I think it's on. I think we're good. Let me know if you can't hear me. So full disclosure, I don't have a child. I don't have the worry that I certainly appreciate it because I did have children. three of them, young men that went all the way through schools. I don't presently have the fear that Shannon and others, all the parents of the children that are going to these schools, really every school in the country, that something tragic and violent can happen to their child that day in school. It's very difficult to talk logically about child safety. We all are appropriately protective of our children. And there comes a point when I think there's almost inevitably going to be some level of friction between what the parents and what the family members think they deserve and certainly fairly want for their children, and what the community, what the school, and what, frankly, our society should contemplate on the other hand. I think there are some premises that we should accept this evening for our discussions. At least these are my premises. One is that it is difficult to talk logically about child safety because it's very easy to say, and I've seen this in articles, and I've done some research on this after Scott kindly asked me to participate, where people will say, we've spent this much money, we've done this many things, and you hear this phrase a lot. In a lot of circumstances, if we can save one life, then it's all worth it. And I don't mean to be a contrarian, but from a governing point of view, from the point of view of our community, it's not logical and it's not rational, it's not necessarily true that to save one person, there's an unlimited amount of cost, expense, change of culture, restrictions, violations of privacy, and everything else that a community here in the United States should be willing to go through. But that's a very difficult statement to make, and it'd be very easy to say to me, well, you don't have a kid walking into X high school every day. And I get that. Another of the premises, I think, for our discussion is that metal detectors will represent a fundamental change to the privacy of our students. A fundamental change, a cultural change. It represents a fundamental change in the rights that our citizen students have. And it represents a material change in the way they learn about their world and how they're going to be citizens in this world when they become adults. It's a change to the culture of the schools. If you accept all of those things, there has to be a really good reason with demonstrable results to make a change that's this fundamental. We're talking about both constitutional and other rights. And changing the way kids think about school. Changing the way they think about the manner in which they're treated at school. Changing the manner in which they even exit and of course, enter that school. I'll pass the microphone along. I have some other thoughts in that regard. The reason I'm calling tonight, at this point in time, almost a snapshot in time, is given the fundamental premises that I discussed, I haven't seen evidence, and I wasn't privy to the trip that was taken to Cincinnati. That sounds like it was a good idea because we can learn from other communities, obviously. I don't think the city does enough of that sometimes. But I haven't seen the sort of demonstrable results that would be worth the time, the money, the expense, the cultural and constitutional and privacy changes that would be engendered with metal detectors, which is not just metal detectors, it's the people that run the metal detectors, it's the searches of bags and of people because their belt buckles go off, just like you see in the airports every day. I haven't seen where anybody can show that it's actually working and that it's worth that change in the way our children go to school and in the way we as families consider our children going to school. My mind can be changed, and that's one of the reasons we're here, I guess. So.
Thank you, Mr. Murphy. Let's hear from Nick Miles.
You know, I don't buy these arguments regarding the privacy portion. Part of it is this. You know, I'm a very libertarian person. I'm very pro privacy rights, but you know, we give up part of those rights to be safe. We do it when we go to airports every single time. We do it when we go to the courthouse every single day. We do it when we go to the Young Center. You go to a basketball game and you give up that privacy right. And I know people complain when that first happens, but that's something we all just kind of say, oh yeah, walk through metal detectors. Maybe you have to take off your belt. So the idea that somehow students are giving up a privacy right is a little ridiculous when it's something that's so ingrained within our government, within our culture, within our ability to go from one city to another on an airplane. You know, this is something, as I said before in the past, no one's happy about this. This isn't something we're all saying, this is great. It's a situation that's confronting us. Juvenile violence, specifically in the city with guns, has skyrocketed the past year or so. I was a prosecutor focusing on violent crime, particularly the past couple of years. I do defense work now, but the amount of juvenile crime regarding firearms is frightening, and we have to do something. We can't just stand by and allow the status quo. I looked at some research online. I found an article in the LA Times, and as many of you know, New York City has had metal detectors, I believe, in most of the schools since, I'd say, around 2002. There was a lot of violence in the 90s schools, and they slowly implemented them. They have about 1.1 million students there. There's not been a shooting incident in a New York City school since 2002. Do you know the last time a shooting happened in Louisville, Kentucky in a school? It was at Fern Creek High School in 2014. And, for me, I don't have children in JCPS schools. I'm a father. I may in the next couple of years. I went to JPS schools, but it didn't hit close to home to me when right up the street a child brings a gun to Atherton High School. And as I said, this isn't something that anyone's happy about. And it's not a one-stop solution. But what it is, it's part of a bigger comprehensive plan to say we're going to do something about it, and we're not going to allow a firearm, a handgun, to go through those doors.
Thank you, Mr. Mudd. Our next panelist that we'd like to hear from is a student at Central High School. And her teacher was contacted, and there were some discussions in class, and she indicated that she had a strong interest in participating here tonight. So we'd like to hear from this young lady, Kaori.
Yes, my name is Kaori Terry. I'm a junior at Central High School. I am against the metal detectors because I think we're not actually thinking this out. Like he said, children's safety is totally different from the airport. It's different from when you go anywhere else. The social media is a big part of us as youth, and I think the way that security is already portrayed in the media, we're not thinking of if we were to put a policeman in my school, I'm going to look like, so am I a criminal now? I'm going to feel like I'm in prison. And to think about how much time it'll take for me to get searched every morning and I'm missing school. That's another thing. I'm not against public safety, but I'm against the metal detectors. Just to think of how much money that will be taken out just to get metal detectors. Central has over 11 entrances, so if you were just to put 2 anywhere, people can get in illegally every day, either way. I think that money should go towards resources to update our schools. A lot of schools have different advantages with technology, and some of us don't. Some of our books are outdated. So I think that's what we should focus on, is the root causes. Where are these guns coming from? Who are the people? We should be convicting the people and not the children, because we do not know. If someone is to tell us, take this gun and use it wisely, I'm going to use it to defend myself because, from history I know it's a weapon, but I don't know how to use it carefully. So I feel like we obviously don't have some good parenting skills at home that we may need to work on. So what are we going to do with our parents? They're going to be for the metal detectors because their kids are being safe. But you're only going to protect me for those 8 hours of school. What about when I leave?
Thank you. Felicia Newman.
Well, I don't have any children in JCPS. I'm a graduate of JCPS, and my sister is a teacher at JCPS. A couple of things that I'm hearing that are, I don't feel ever a good reason to not be for a safety issue is money. We find money for everything we want to do. We found money for the Omni Hotel to come here and get 27 years of free property tax. We found money we'll find money for Walmart to give them free property tax. We'll find money to decorate downtown during the Christmas holiday, even though we're supposed to be a multicultural, multi-religious city, and spend money on Christmas. I have no problem with that, but why can't we come up with money to keep kids safe? I understand the idea that we don't want to turn schools into prisons, and I appreciate the articulateness of the student, But I think that the safety of all the students is paramount over how the feeling is of how when you get there. I'm sure all of us remember the days when we could go to Louisville International Airport and walk our family member to the door of the plane, hug them, kiss them, and do the things we do, watch the plane go off. You can't do that anymore. It's a different world, it's a different time, and we all adapt it. It's commonplace now to go to TSA. It's commonplace to get searched. If we haven't decided that we're going to have gun control and we're going to be the Wild Wild West, then we need to have precautions because guns are everywhere. And I don't want them in the hands of someone who doesn't know how to properly use it. I don't want it in the hands of a mentally disturbed person, and I don't want it in the hands of a child. So we're going to have to adapt.
Thank you. Mr. Goodwin, Michael Goodwin.
Thanks. My name is Mike Goodwin. I'm an attorney here in town. I do criminal defense, and I also do civil rights work. And I'm on the board at the ACLU of Kentucky, although I'm not representing them today. I'm just here on my own. Thanks for the invitation. I have two sons in JCPS, one of which is in middle school, the other is in elementary school. And before I knew we'd have such an articulate student as Kaori here with me tonight, when I picked up my kids from school today, after researching this a little bit, I saw that 1 in 5 individuals in the United States during the school day finds themselves inside of a school. So 1 out of 5 of us is going to go into school every day across this country if it's a school day. That's a lot of people. That is a lot of people to go through metal detectors. And that is not an inconsequential thing to think about when we discuss this issue. So I asked my 11-year-old. He's been watching the debates, so I said, "Oh, it's a debate tonight." And he said, "Well, can I go and be in it?" And I said, "Well, what would you say?" And I told him what the issue was. Should we have a metal detector at your middle school? He said, "No." He didn't know what position I was taking. I said, "Why not?" And Finn said, "Well, we don't need them. Why would we need them here?" I said, "Would it make you feel safer if you went through a metal detector every day?" He said, "No, it would make me feel less safe." Why is that? I'd feel like something was wrong if they had to have a metal detector there. It would scare me to see that every morning. And he said, "And how much do those things cost?" And that's an 11-year-old. And that was exactly what I found when I surveyed the information across the country. And that's presuming that metal detectors make us safer. And the studies nationwide have proven they don't. It's a completely false sense of security. Somebody mentioned, I'll get to New York City second, but there's one study that I've seen that's been able to, that it kind of compiled all the studies nationwide. It's in the Journal of School Health. And it looked at 15 years of research on the impact of metal detectors on school violence and their perceptions on school violence. And the conclusion from that study, that comprehensive look at all the studies that they could find nationwide that had been peer-reviewed, was that there was insufficient evidence to find any beneficial effect of metal detector use on either student or staff behavior, safety, or perceptions of those things. These things don't even make the students or the staff that go through them feel any safer when they get inside. And in fact, the research, the review of that research indicates that the use of metal detectors in schools is associated with lower levels of student perceptions on security in school and a higher level of school disorder. There are lots of folks that consult on school safety nationwide, not magnetometer manufacturers, but people who consult school-wide on what schools should do for school safety that say, don't put them in, they harm school safety, they give you a false sense of security, and that money is much better spent in other places. I suggest you look at schoolsecurity.org. But rather than go through all those, I'll talk to a couple of the reasons that they indicated, because I found this fascinating. First, while schools certainly want to guarantee safety for their students, they also have to remember that schools have to create an environment where children are respected, they feel good about themselves, and they have positive attitudes towards their classmates, their teachers, and their schools. Metal detectors are a disservice to all of these. It's like an excessive police force. If we have excessive police force or over-militarization or whatever we may call it in our schools, it harms school safety. Magnetometers or metal detectors don't work on their own. You have to have people there to man them. Number one, they've got to be properly trained. That's a lot of time, that's a lot of money, and it's a lot of expense to have people properly man them. If you have magnetometers and they're only manned a couple of hours a day, they don't do you any good, right? Certainly students are clever enough to find out all kinds of things to do if they want to. A student or someone who wishes harm upon those students can certainly get past an unoccupied or unmanned magnetometer. So that's a lot of people, a lot of work hours to have those covered. But beyond that, those metal detectors become a flashpoint for often confrontational interaction between law enforcement or security guards and the students. From New York, we talked about I think Mr. Mudd mentioned that New York has had these types of things in place since for 10 years or so. A New York survey of those students indicated that 56% of the students had to remove or lift up their shirt or piece of clothing